You wake up one morning, check the news. BRICS countries just announced a new currency backed by gold to replace the dollar for international trade. Saudi Arabia accepts Yuan for oil sales. The European Union reduces dollar reserves by 30%. Within weeks, the dollar drops 25% against other currencies. Suddenly, your trip to Europe costs twice as much. The iPhone you wanted went from $1,000 to $1,500. Gasoline jumps to $8 per gallon. Your grocery bill doubles, everything imported becomes unaffordable. Your salary stays the same, but your purchasing power just collapsed. You're getting poorer every day and you don't understand why. What you're experiencing is the end of dollar hegemony, the greatest transfer of wealth and power in modern history. And it's happening right now in 2025. The dollar has been the world's reserve currency since 1944. 70% of global trade is settled in dollars. 88% of foreign exchange transactions involve dollars. Countries hold 60% of their reserves in dollar-denominated assets. This gives America an extraordinary privilege. We can print money and the world has to accept it. We run massive trade deficits and other countries lend us the money. We import more than we export and pay with paper we create. It's the greatest deal in history, but it's ending. And when it ends, American living standards will crater. Leave a comment below telling us where you're from and what you think about de-dollarization. Do you think the dollar will remain the reserve currency or is China taking over? Also hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to reveal about the mechanics of reserve currency collapse will show you why this matters more than any other economic issue. Let me walk you through exactly how America's privilege becomes America's nightmare. Reserve currency status is everything. When your currency is the global reserve, you have superpowers other countries don't have. You can print money to pay debts because the world needs your currency for trade. Foreign countries buy your government bonds to hold reserves, keeping your interest rates artificially low. You import cheap goods and export paper currency. Your citizens enjoy high living standards without producing equivalent value. The entire system is built on the world needing dollars the moment they don't need dollars. The system collapses and your living standards collapse with it. De-dollarization is accelerating faster than anyone expected. Russia and China now settle trade in yuan, and rubles completely bypassing the dollar. Saudi Arabia signed currency swap agreements with China to sell oil for yuan, breaking the 50-year Petrodollar system. India buys Russian oil in rupees. BRICS countries representing 40% of global population are creating alternative payment systems. The mBridge system allows instant cross-border payments without dollars. Central banks are dumping dollar reserves and buying gold at the fastest pace in 70 years. Every month, more countries announce they're reducing dollar dependency. The network effect that made the dollar dominant is reversing. The trigger was America weaponizing the dollar when the U.S. froze Russia's dollar reserves and kicked Russian banks out of SWIFT after the Ukraine invasion. Every country realized their dollar holdings aren't safe. If you disagree with America, they can confiscate your reserves, freeze your assets, cut you off from the financial system. Suddenly, the dollar went from neutral global currency to American political weapon. Countries watched Russia lose $300 billion overnight and decided they need alternatives fast. You can't have a reserve currency that the issuer uses as a weapon. It destroys the trust required for reserve status. China positioned itself perfectly for this moment. They've been preparing for 20 years. The Belt and Road Initiative created trade relationships with 140 countries. They're the largest trading partner for over 120 countries. They lend in yuan, building dependency on their currency. They accumulated the world's largest gold reserves, creating hard asset backing. They developed CAPS, the alternative to SWIFT for yuan transactions. They created digital yuan that bypasses the dollar-based banking system entirely. When countries need an alternative to the dollar, China offers a fully built system ready to go. The consequences for America are catastrophic. When the world doesn't need dollars, our trade deficit becomes unsustainable. We import 800 billion more than we export annually. We pay for it by printing dollars that foreigners accept. When they stop accepting dollars, we can't afford our imports. Everything gets expensive fast. The lifestyle Americans are accustomed to disappears. The cheap goods from China, the affordable oil from the Middle East, the inexpensive electronics from Asia, all become luxuries. Inflation explodes, not from domestic policy but from currency collapse. Your dollar buys less internationally, so everything costs more domestically. Government debt becomes impossible to service. America owes $34 trillion. We pay it by selling bonds to foreign countries who need dollars for reserves and trade. When they don't need dollars, they stop buying our bonds. Suddenly, the U.S. government can't find buyers for its debt. Interest rates spike. The government prints money to cover the gap. Hyperinflation enters the conversation. The dollar loses value faster. A doom loop starts where each round of money printing causes more inflation, which causes more dollar dumping, which requires more money printing. It's how empires end. The military-industrial complex depends on dollar hegemony. America maintains 800 military bases in 80 countries. We have 11 aircraft carrier groups. We spend more on military than the next 10 countries combined. We can only afford this because the world subsidizes us through dollar reserve holdings. When the dollar loses reserve status, we can't afford the military empire bases close troops come home. The global American presence shrinks. We become a normal country with a military sized to our actual economy, not to our imaginary money printing power. The wealth gap goes from bad to catastrophic. Rich Americans hold assets, stocks, real estate businesses that maintain value. Poor and middle-class Americans hold cash and depend on wages when the dollar collapses. The poor get destroyed, while the rich are protected. Inflation wipes out savings, destroys fixed incomes, makes wages worthless. Inequality explodes social tensions. Skyrocket. The rich move assets offshore, buy foreign properties, get second citizenships. The poor are trapped, holding worthless dollars, watching their life savings evaporate. If this video showed you the greatest geopolitical shift of our lifetime, leave a comment below telling us where you're from and what you think about the end of dollar dominance. How are you protecting yourself from currency collapse? Share this with everyone who doesn't understand why de-dollarization is the biggest economic story of the decade, and hit subscribe so you see the next global economic warning before the crisis hits. Because when reserve currencies fall, empires fall with them, and we're watching it happen in real time.